Do you remember those long summer days when time felt endless and your whole world was just the block you lived on? Do you remember the clatter of bike chains, the way your shoes hit the sidewalk, the chalk dust on your fingertips, and how it felt to believe a jawbreaker was the ultimate prize? If you do, chances are you remember Ed and Eddy. And maybe even now, decades later, a part of you still smiles when you think of it. It's been over 20 years since the show first aired, and yet it still lingers, like a tune you forgot you knew, like a corner of childhood preserved in amber. Ed and Eddy wasn't just a cartoon. It was a feeling, a strange, funny, chaotic little world that felt oddly like our own. And for many of us, it still hits, because it reminds us of a time when things didn't need to make sense to matter. The show began in 1999 on Cartoon Network, but the world it lived in felt older than that. The cul-de-sac wasn't full of tech or trends. It was made of fences and cardboard, bikes and backyard trees, a quiet suburban timelessness that could have belonged to the 70s or the 90s. It felt like anywhere. It felt like everywhere. And more importantly, it felt like yours. Each episode dropped us back into that neighborhood. Just the kids, no adults, no real consequences, and definitely no structure. The Eddies, with their mismatched personalities and unbreakable bond, were always up to something. A scam, a plan, a dream. Usually involving 25 cents and a jawbreaker the size of your fist. It was ridiculous. It was repetitive. It was perfect. If you're listening to this now, chances are you remember those episodes. The weird inventions like the fake-out carnival or the Ed company scam business. The endless failures, the over-the-top reactions, the thuds, the squeals, the scrambled music. But more than that, you remember how it felt. The giddy thrill of watching something so unpredictable. The comfort of knowing the Eddies would always come back no matter how many times they failed. The odd, grounding magic of knowing that nothing ever really changed. Maybe you remember Eddy's confidence, so loud it was almost desperate. Maybe you saw a little of yourself in Double D's neat handwriting and nervous habits. Or maybe you just loved Ed, the lovable doofus with a heart as big as his shoes. Together, they made chaos look fun. They made being an outsider feel okay. And they reminded us that friendship, even in the weirdest of forms, could be enough. The background characters, too, were unforgettable. Kevin with his smug attitude and never-ending dork insults. Rolf with his farm animals and mysterious customs. Naz, the cool girl with a gentle voice. Sarah and Jimmy, always watching, always judging. And of course, the Canker sisters, whose creepy affection created chaos all their own. Every character was a piece of the cul-de-sac puzzle. And you didn't need to relate to all of them. You just needed to know them. And you did. What made Ed and Eddy timeless wasn't just its humor or its characters. It was its tone. It was handmade in a time when hand-drawn animation was on its way out. You could see the lines wiggle, almost as if the world itself was alive. There was something raw and unpolished about it. It didn't try to be sleek or smooth. It didn't try to teach you anything or wrap things up in a moral. It was weird, loud, often absurd. But it was real. And beneath the noise, the show had an unexpected kind of heart. It never had a message spelled out, but it whispered truths. That fitting in isn't everything. That friends are sometimes all you've got. That failing over and over again doesn't make you a failure. That sometimes the world doesn't make sense, and that's okay. We didn't need it to be perfect. We just needed it to be ours. Even as kids, we knew that the Eddies were different. They weren't the cool kids. They weren't the winners. They were always on the outside, always trying, always falling short. And somehow, we loved them for it. They weren't heroes. They weren't role models. They were just kids, imperfect, overambitious, sometimes selfish, sometimes sweet, just like us. There was an honesty in that, a kind of vulnerability hidden in the slapstick. The Eddies dreamed big and fell hard, but they never stayed down. That resilience, that endless loop of hope and failure and trying again, it echoed something real, especially when you were a kid. and every plan you made ended in disaster. Watching the Eddies mess up didn't feel discouraging. It felt comforting, because they always got back up. And then there was the candy, the jawbreakers, always just out of reach. A symbol of everything the Eddies wanted: joy, success, validation, even love. The candy was never really the point. It was what they thought the candy would give them. And isn't that childhood in a nutshell? Chasing things you think will make you whole, only to realize the chase itself is what keeps you going. The sound design of the show was a language all its own. You could recognize the creak of a door, the squish of Ed's feet, the zany background score that never quite played it straight. It gave the world a strange rhythm, like a song you couldn't hum, but always recognized. Even now, hearing that theme music might pull you back to your living room floor, the glow of the TV casting shadows as the sun went down. And maybe you remember the last time you watched it, before growing up, before the show ended, before life got louder and more complicated. Or maybe you came back to it later during a late-night binge or while showing it to someone younger. Maybe you expected it to feel silly. Maybe you were surprised by the wave of emotion that crept up instead. Because even now, Ed and Eddy still hits. It hits because it was ours. It was weird and messy and loud, just like childhood. It didn't pretend to be perfect. It didn't try to explain itself. It just was. And in a world that changes constantly, there's comfort in something that stayed the same. The cul-de-sac never grew up. It never changed. It's still there, waiting. Like the corner of a memory you can always return to. When the show finally ended, it didn't go out with a bang. It didn't get rebooted or stretched beyond its time. It ended with a movie, Ed and Eddy's Big Picture Show. That gave fans something rare: closure. In that final story, the Eddies left the cul-de-sac, chased acceptance, and finally got it. After years of being outcasts, they were welcomed. And Eddy, the loudest, most insecure of them all, admitted the truth. He wasn't just chasing money or candy, he was chasing approval. He wanted to be liked, just like any of us. It was a quiet, heartfelt ending, and it made sense. Because even in its madness, Ed and Eddy always had something underneath. A longing, a vulnerability, a hope. And maybe that's why it still matters, because as adults, we understand that longing even more. We understand the scams, the masks we wear, the fear of not belonging. We understand what it's like to want something so badly, even if we can't explain why. And most of all, we understand what it means to have people who stick by you, no matter how many times you fail. That's what the show gave us. Not just laughs, but a reminder. A reminder that being weird is okay. That trying and failing is part of the process. That childhood didn't have to make sense to be meaningful. And that sometimes even a cartoon can hold a piece of your heart. 20 years later, we're older. Maybe wiser. Maybe not. But the cul-de-sac is still there. In our memories, in old DVDs, in YouTube, clips at 2 in the morning. It's there in our laughter, in our nostalgia, in the parts of us that still dream, still scheme, still hope for. Jawbreakers. So if you ever wonder why this show still matters, just think of the Eddies. Think of their friendship, their failures, their impossible dreams. And think of how it felt to watch them as a kid, when all you needed to be happy was an open street, a goofy plan, and a couple of friends who never gave up on you. Because in the end, Ed and Eddy was never just about candy. It was about sticking together, laughing at the chaos, and finding magic in the ordinary. And that still hits. And maybe that's the most incredible part of it all. That even now, 2 decades later, long after the last scam was run and the last jawbreaker was chased, Ed and Eddy still finds a way to burrow into our hearts, still makes us laugh, still makes us feel. Because when you strip away the gags and the goofy voices, the cul-de-sac was never just about the hustle. It was about something deeper. It was a mirror, in its own warped and wonderful way of growing up. The awkwardness, the insecurity, the wild, impulsive dreams, the endless summers that felt like they would last forever, and the way friendships, even the messy ones, carried us through them. Each character was exaggerated, sure. cartoonish in the best way, but within their wild designs were bits of truth. Ed, the sweet, escapist dreamer, who saw life through a lens of comic books and monster movies. Ed, the nervous perfectionist, who carried the weight of expectations with grace, even when he didn't understand them. And Eddy, the loud one, the desperate one, whose entire persona was a shield, a cover-up for a kid who just wanted to be liked, to matter. And the cul-de-sac kids? They weren't just background characters. They were archetypes of the people we all knew. Kevin, the smug bike kid who seemed like he had it all figured out. Rolf with his strange traditions and otherworldly logic. Naz, the girl next door with effortless charm. Johnny and Plank, the reminder that imagination could be a best friend. Even Sarah and Jimmy had their place, the bullies, the bystanders, the siblings. It was a world that, in its weird way, made sense. And somehow Ed and Eddy never talked down to us. It didn't preach. It didn't need to spell things out. It trusted that we'd understand in time, that we'd grow with it. And many of us did. Watching it now, years later through older eyes, it hits differently. The humor still holds up, but it's the quieter moments that echo louder. The loneliness in Eddy's voice when he's finally honest. The look in Double D's eyes when his kindness isn't returned. The way Ed, in all his simplicity, often ends up being the most grounded of them all. And maybe that's why it still resonates. Not just because it was funny or clever or iconic, but because in its chaos, it told the truth. About childhood, about us. So as we slowly pull away from the cul-de-sac, the pastel skies fading into stars, and the sound of distant laughter echoing through the alleyways of memory, take a moment, breathe. Close your eyes, if they aren't already, let your mind drift back. To the sound of screen doors slamming, the crunch of bike tires on hot pavement, the smell of freshly cut grass, to sprinkler arcs, sidewalk chalk, and freezer pops, to a world where the only thing that mattered was what game you'd play next, or how many jawbreakers a quarter could buy. It's okay if you miss it. That's what nostalgia is, a soft ache, a warm kind of longing, a quiet wish to visit just once more. And tonight, through this little story, maybe you did. Maybe, just for a little while, you were back in the cul-de-sac, laughing with Ed, sketching blueprints with Ed, and chasing big dreams with Eddy. Maybe you felt the sun on your face. Maybe you remembered what it was like to be a kid again. And that's the magic of a show like Ed and Eddy. It doesn't just live in old reruns or faded DVDs. It lives in us, in the way we smile when we hear the theme song, in the way we remember those quiet, precious summers, in the way it still somehow hits, even after all this time. So thank you for spending this time with me tonight, for revisiting those old sidewalks and scam-filled schemes. I hope this little journey brought you peace, a little comfort, a little smile, and maybe, just maybe, a gentle path toward rest. As your thoughts begin to slow and your breathing softens, let the world of Ed and Eddy fade into the background. Let the echoes of their laughter become whispers in your dreams. They'll still be there, waiting, the next time you need them. The cul-de-sac never really closes. It just sleeps, like you will soon. Good night, dreamer. Sleep well. And remember, even after 20 years, some stories never truly end.